swear by Almighty God to tell the truth and nothing but the truth.
Thank you very much. Please be seated.
Thank you, Ms. Al-Najjar. Could I ask that you speak up a little bit more? You've got a very faint voice at the moment, and we'll need to capture your evidence for the benefit of the transcribers. Okay? Could I ask you to turn to page 7595 in the bundle? Tell me when you're there.
Yes.
We see there a witness statement bearing your name,
Yes.
and it runs all the way to page 7654.
7654?
Yes?
Yes.
Is that your signature which appears after paragraph 203 on page 7653?
Yes.
Is that the evidence which you wish to give to this court?
Yes.
And subject to any clarification you may provide, are the contents of it true?
Yes.
Thank you. Judge, I have a couple of supplementary questions, if I may. The first matter concerns dates, Mrs. Al-Najjar, of certain individuals in the HRER personnel who have long left the employ of the defendant. The first is Aziza Dada. What can you tell the court as to when she left the bank?
2019, sometime in May.
May of 2019. Secondly, Diana Tabara. What can you tell us about when she left the bank?
Diana Tabara left in 2023 after prolonged illness leave starting January 2023, and then being on garden leave from July 2023 until October 2023. So she left in 2023 October.
I see. So she was off on long-term sick from January to July.
She never came back.
Never since what? Since January 2023?
From 2023 Jan, she's been on prolonged illness leave, after which she started serving her notice in July 2023, left the bank sometime in October 2023.
I understand. That's very clear. And can I ask you to go to paragraph 48 of your statement? That's on page 7607.
Yes?
And you say there, well, I understand that you have a correction to make in relation to paragraph 48.
Yes.
What is that correction or clarification?
So when I was looking at the emails, I saw that there was an email dated August in 2019, 7th August specifically, and that's on page 2981. And
Can we just go to that, 2981?
yes. I was on annual leave during this time,
Yes.
and it seems that Simon Bucket wrote an email addressed to myself, Diana, and Caroline Abbasi, and it was talking about the allegation against Suhail Akbar. So I wasn't aware of this email until I saw that email.
I see.
I was on annual leave and block leave. I usually take this time every year.
I see. So page 2981, we see an email from Mr. Bucket, 7th of August 2019 at 11:43. It's addressed to Aziza Dada and Caroline Abbasi. and it commences, I am directing this to you as I know that Mirna, that's you, and Diana are currently on leave. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. If you remain there, Mrs. Alnajar, there'll be some further questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bickford-Smith.
Good morning, Mrs. Alnajar.
Good morning. Can I use the paper and pen here?
Do you have any objection to that, Mr.
No
Bickford-Smith?
objection at all.
I'd just ask you to keep your voice up if you could. You have a very soft voice, Ms. Alnajar, and we need to capture that
Yes.
on the recording so the transcribers have got it. Thank
All
you.
right,
I've also been told to speak up, so there you go. You're not alone. So, Mrs. Alnajar, you created the bank's employee relations function in 2010, correct?
Correct.
Your
I'm
current-
trying to establish the function of employee relations for the UAE.
You're currently employed as Head of Employee Relations for Africa and the Middle East, correct?
Correct.
That is a very senior role. Can you tell the court roughly how many employees the bank has in Africa and the Middle East?
So currently, we are at a different number since I took over the role. We have reduced in AME. We're roughly at 9,000 plus.
Now,
Is my voice okay?
Yes.
At this tone?
yes, I can hear you. What matters is whether the judge,
Yes.
I, and the transcript can hear you. I can hear
So
you.
far, so good.
So far, so good. Now, in the bank, the employment, the ER and HR teams are split, correct?
The HR and the ER team are not split as such. We are all under the HR function, but we have centers of excellence. So employee relations is under ER. So employee relations is under the human resource function, under employee advocacy today. So the structure of the human resource has changed since I joined the bank. We started as one function, all of us reporting into the head of HR in country in 2010. Eventually, the structures changed and they created centers of excellence. So you've got resourcing, employee relations, talent, and other teams like PRO. We started to report into our functional heads, and that's where I started to report into the global head of ER at one point, instead of the head of HR in the region. But we all fall under the umbrella of human resources, and that's related to the change in the operating model. So HRBPs, for example, used to manage resourcing, employee relations when I joined, and many other roles. They used to broker whatever products HR had. And we, in my role as employee relations, my role was to give advice to the HR business partner, like a subject matter expert advice on how to manage ER matters. They used to manage end-to-end ER. We didn't have a huge team, it was just me, for example.
So, I don't want to delve too deeply into an organisational point, but the essential point is this. ER, in its core, is an advisory role, correct? Do you agree with that?
Partly.
Whereas, and for example, in ER, if there are questions about disciplinary management, speak-ups, grievances, those will come to ER, correct? Whereas normally an HR business partner will deal with what I describe as the more day-to-day matters. Would you accept that?
Today, yes.
Now, you, in liaison with your line manager, decide that you should gain some experience as an HR business partner, correct? And you were assigned to the Global Islamic Banking Unit run by Mr. Sheikh. Now, double hatting is an expression we've heard in evidence. Were you double hatting, in other words? I.e., you had your head of ER for Africa and Middle East hat and your HR business partner hat. Is that correct?
Yes, as the HR business partner for the GIB.
And just
And head of employee relations for Africa, Middle East, and Pakistan.
And just by way of comparison, how many employees are there in the Global Islamic Banking Unit itself?
Today, I don't know, but back then they could have been 20, I can't recall really, but maybe 20, 25.
So you've got this role where on the one hand you are a regional head of ER in a region with many thousands of people, and then on the other hand you have a much narrower role as HR business partner for a 20-25 strong unit. Would you agree with that?
Yes, it was part of my self-development opportunity, and after I've applied for the head of HR for UAE. So just to give some more insight on my role as AME head of employee relations, I have direct reports and skip levels, so I don't just alone look after AME and the 9,000 plus.
I would be surprised if you did. But just on reporting lines, can I just ask some simple questions and just for the court record? Who did you report into as HR business partner for the Global Islamic Bank? And did you have someone you reported into?
No, I continued to report into Caroline, and if there is any need to escalate to the head of HR in UAE or the regional head of HR AME, I would do as necessary.
And what was Ms. Tabara's role at this time, i.e. 2018, 2019? What was her role?
She reported into me in her capacity as head of employee relations for the UAE.
So we have a situation where on the one hand she is reporting into you in your capacity as a head of AME and Pakistan, and also she is ultimately the country head for the HR business partner job, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Now, final point on reporting lines. The compliance, there are separate, in terms of employee reporting lines, there is a reporting line of employees of the unit up ultimately to Mr. Sheikh, correct? So the employees in the global in the unit, the Islamic banking unit, that is reported to Mr. Sheikh ultimately, correct? I.e., he was the CEO of that unit. You agree?
I agree. He was the CEO of GIB.
Whereas by contrast, Mr. Mahmood and Mr. Vaselli, they did not report into Mr. Sheikh. Their reporting lines were in legal and compliance, correct?
Yes, yes, correct.
And legal and compliance have their own HR function, is that correct?
Again, the structure of the bank would be that HR business partners are given certain functions, and that is something that they can rotate around. So yes, usually an HR business partner will look after several functions, and as legal and compliance, they would have ideally had their HR business partners as well.
I'm very grateful. If I can now ask you in the bundle to turn, please, to page 7599, please.
Yes?
So at paragraph 19 on this page, you say that you received an email from Rouhani, the Human Resources Business Partner for CFC. Now, is that control functions? Is that right, or what is that?
Support functions.
Support
and
functions.
CCFC is the compliance function.
Compliance function.
And Rouhani is the HR business partner from a global perspective.
And received this email in your capacity as head of ER for Africa and the Middle East, correct? This is.
Correct.
Let me take you to.
Yes, correct.
And if we go to in the bundle, if you could go please to page 1684. I'm writing regarding a somewhat unique case which has been escalated to me for input. So in other words, this has been escalated within the compliance report, HR reporting line, correct?
It's going to the HR business partner, and then she's coming to us. Ruwani's coming to employee relations and the shared investigative services team. Naveen used to be working in the SIS team.
And what it says is, an employee in compliance, Shiraz Mahmood, has provided feedback to the CEO of Islamic Banking as part of the mid-year performance cycle. While part is based on the individual's performance, there are aspects which could be viewed as conduct issues. There also seems to be an underlying allegation that the CEO lacks the competence. If this is the case, it could present serious risks to the Islamic Bank as a whole. I'm pasting the feedback at the bottom of this email for your reference. Then we have, on the other hand, at the same time, the CEO of Islamic Banking, Rehan Sheikh, has raised some concerns about the feedback allegations made by Shiraz being made in bad faith. And you can read that on the screen. Can I just give you, as long the court is familiar with this email, so if you just take the time you need to read the evil email. Now, at this time, had you been assigned to had your assignment as HR business partner begun or not?
Yes.
But it must have sort of just begun, is that correct?
Around that time. Before, a little before.
Paragraph 23 of your witness statement, that's at 7600, says that you discussed the matter with Navin Goyal from SIS, and then you reply, and we can see your reply at 1696 in the bundle, 1696.
1696 or 7600. Which page do you want me to go to?
1696 it should be. So you set out there what you're going to, this is advice, do you agree? You're advising Mazibel as to how best to handle this situation, correct? Okay, well, can I draw your attention specifically to points 2 and 3 in this email?
Yes.
So you say there, not subject matter experts in the case, hence why we propose that the issue is raised to the regional COO to review or to assign for peer review. Based on the findings from the review, HR and SIS would be in a better position to take action as necessary. We're not in a position to comment on the feedback provided. Then you say the last point is related to Shiraz feeling undermined by Sahel. That again can only be established and further investigated post the peer review and findings on whether Shiraz's escalations are valid in the first place. And then, in light of the above, we suggest that you advise Manu and Ferdi to agree on who can independently run a peer review. If they feel conflicted, then a group review can be suggested. 3 questions arising from this. First, you recommend a peer review of the 365 feedback, but that was never performed, was it?
I am not aware. I just give a recommendation.
Second, from point 3 in this email, we can see that your proposal is that Mr. Mahmood's concerns feeling undermined and so on by Mr. Akbar should be investigated after the peer review. Do you accept that it follows from that if there is no peer review, those concerns will not be investigated?
So ideally, if they come back to us to say, we have established that there are capability issues with Suhail, for example. Suhail has failed to meet his objectives as the COO, and hence Shiraz's comments on Suhail's failure to meet certain standards and policies. And in example X is when Suhail spoke to Shiraz, for example, hypothetically speaking. Shiraz would have felt undermined because Suhail did not take his feedback seriously. This is a situation where it should come to us in specific for us in employee relations to review. If it doesn't come, there's nothing for me to review. I don't go fishing for matters and situations. It has to be reported to us in specific incidents by date, who was there, what has happened, what incident was perceived or experienced as a situation of being undermined by Suhail Akbar. The 365 feedback was Shiraz's view of Suhail and not something directed at us with specifics in terms of the behavior for an incident for me to review. So if they did the peer review and they've established there is a capability issue with Suhail to the extent that Suhail is failing to meet his objectives as suggested in the 365 feedback, then I expect that they come back to me with the specific incidents where Suhail undermined Shiraz or made Shiraz feel undermined, for me to look into it. At that point, there's nothing for me to look into from an ER perspective. Equally, SIS. SIS will look into fraud investigations, for example, theft, sanctions, money laundering. That's why, from an ER or an SIS, there wasn't enough in this for us to initiate anything.
Did you know at the time of sending this email that the regional COO was Mr. Peters?
Sorry?
Did you know who the regional COO was at this time?
The regional CEO, the group CEO?
Sorry, I've got to just move.
The regional CEO in AME is Sunil Kaushal. If you're talking about AME, we call him the regional CEO for AME.
No, the regional COO.
The regional
COO.
for AME?
it says here, it's a 1696. It says, we
16.
propose that the issue is raised to the regional COO.
So that would be Sohail's people leader, because functions report into their global functions. So COO is part of the operations team. CFCC is part of the compliance team. So they report into their functions.
My question is simply, at the time you sent this email, did you know that Mr. Akbar had already spoken to his regional people leader about this 365 feedback?
I can't recall.
Okay. We then have 1763, please. This is a long email chain which goes down, but let's just focus on the email in the middle of the page. Sarah Murad. Can you help the court with who Sarah Murad was?
Sarah Murad is the HR business partner. She was one of the HR business partners in the HR team sitting in the UAE.
Now, this is an email from Mr. Akbar to her. My question is, this email goes to her even though you are the HR business partner for the unit. Was there any reason for that you're aware of?
This is a normal standard process. They go to any channel they want to, and the HR business partner then redirects as appropriate. There's nothing that is not the standard.
So it says here, I've requested for your case to be formally reviewed. Someone will be reaching out to you in the coming week regarding the same. And he replied to say, perfect, thanks. Do you know yourself whether anyone from HR or ER ever replied to Mr. Akbar's email below his substantive email further?
So we'd have to see who did Sarah write to.
Well, the question is whether you, from your knowledge, know what happened about this.
It may have been the same issue that Rouhani was talking about. So it would have reached to me through Rouhani. Maybe Sarah wrote to Rouhani and Rouhani wrote to me. But I don't know who Sarah went to at this point in this email, what I'm looking at. I would assume they're talking about the same issue of the 365 feedback when they say P3 feedback, because its response to the P3 feedback is the subject. It doesn't say 365 feedback, but it may have been, because the 365 feedback is not given only during the year-end period. It can be given any time during the year among peers or people who work together. Anyone who works with someone else can give feedback.
Well, look at what is said at the bottom of 1763 in bold type in black. This is by Mr. Akbar.
Which page?
1763. The same page you were on. I've reviewed the feedback given in the 365 tool, and I appreciate it, as we all have room to improve. However, as a member of staff in good standing, underpinned by consistently good P3 feedback over a period of 25 years for me as an individual and professional, I feel it's important that I respond to the factual assertions made in the feedback provided. I do not intend to deal or rebuke incidents, perceptions or allegations that are not substantiated by facts such as dates, times, minutes, correspondence. Those I would rather deal with person to person in the presence of HR independent parties so as to find common ground and a better understanding with a view to find a constructive way forward. So Mr. Akbar has sent his response to the 365 feedback. We see here a detailed email at 1764, 1765, 1766. He sends this to HR, clearly asking for this to be pursued in some way. I agree that it isn't entirely clear how he wants it to be pursued. But he sends this in, and as far as we know, nothing happens after this. And the question I need to ask you is whether you can assist the court as to what did happen or didn't happen, or why, or if this is something you simply didn't know about at the time.
Suhail did not come to us in ER to speak about this formally or raise an issue with employee relations formally regarding the 365 feedback that Shiraz wrote to him. I do not recall speaking to Suhail about this ever. And the time when it came to me, it came through Ruwani, and I gave my feedback. If Suhail wanted to share his feedback or response with Shiraz, he could have. We don't get involved in 365 feedback. It's called feedback. People share constructive feedback, people share their views, they could be right, they could be wrong. In this case, Suhail wrote the stuff to Sarah and did not copy me or Diana at this point in time, so I cannot comment on whether he sent it to Shiraz or he didn't send it. Shiraz didn't speak to me about this 365 feedback as well. At this point, it's not coming to me as a grievance from Suhail or asking me how do I respond, because I would have told Suhail, you can write your response if you feel you wanted to. We don't get involved in this. That's not the role of employee relations, really.
So at this stage, we have a position where Mr. Mahmood has given detailed 365 feedback. There's been a recommendation of a peer review. Pending that peer review, there's going to be no reply to Mr. Mahmood's point about his concerns about Mr. Akbar personally. And Mr. Akbar has written his response to HR. But essentially, those things are just staying in the air. In other words, there's no action being taken by anyone about either of these workflows, correct?
A recommendation is not an instruction. We give our recommendation, they can act on it if they deem necessary or feel it's necessary as the senior business people. And they don't have to report back to us. This is not a formal instruction where I'm waiting for them to come back to me on. Shiraz could have come to me directly, or Diana, the head of ER, and could have raised a formal grievance on feeling undermined. Shiraz did not choose to do that. I cannot take a formal grievance when I don't have substance in it on feeling undermined. Shiraz could have raised a speak up. Shiraz could have gone to his people leader and shared his grievance. Shiraz could have come to us directly. Shiraz could have reached out to any other senior management member in the bank, or even the group CEO. There are different channels where Shiraz could have complained specifically about feeling undermined. We do not have access to 365 feedback generally, and this is not a channel for grievances. This is a constructive feedback or thank you feedback, or what do you continue doing, what would we like you to focus on, do things differently, but this is not a channel for raising a grievance. This is the standard across the bank and not just in AME.
Page 7601. You say that in February 2019 you received complaints about the claimant from two junior employees, Geetan and Fatima. You met them within a week or so. Now you say at 7601 that you, as head of ERUAE at the time, primary responsibility for dealing with these HR-related complaints laid with Ms. Tabara. So you refer the complaints to her.
Yes.
Now, as you would have noticed, your witness statement contains normally little page references and so on. But I'm just checking your updated one, because there was an updated one produced very helpfully by the bank solicitors. But in that, there isn't any reference either, because the point is that there isn't, when you say you referred the complaints to her, there isn't any email here showing you referring these complaints to her. How did you do this? Did you say to the complainants that they should contact Ms. Tabara, or did you contact Ms. Tabara by telephone? How did this referral occur?
So I'll take it a step back. As the HR BP for GIB, I came to know that these two colleagues were going through a lot of anxiety, stress, and they weren't feeling comfortable dealing with Shiraz. So I asked Rehan to guide them to speak to me, because it came from, I think, Suhail to Rehan, or Rehan found out, and I said, okay, fine. They can meet with me and share their issues. They need to share their specific issues with me. I'm not taking it yet as an issue. So 2 different meetings were booked, and each one of them shared their concerns, their specifics, and they gave examples. And I go back to specific incidents with examples. For example, one of them told me how she felt terrorized by Shiraz's behavior, because she would be working on her computer and her screen, and then she'll be surprised and shocked to see that Shiraz is standing right at her shoulder without letting her know, and looking at what she was doing on her screen. And she believed he allowed himself to do so because he was the compliance person. She felt terrorized by this behavior. So she gave a specific example. She gave a specific date. My guidance to both the colleagues was, if they wish for this to be formally addressed, they need to start preparing their specific allegations, because we look into specifics. We're not going to go fish for matters against Shiraz. Out of duty of care, because I heard specific incidents, another specific incident that comes to my mind is, at one point in time, one of them was writing the minutes. The minutes are usually recorded, where they have a meeting where Shiraz is present and other members. The responsibility of that colleague who came and complained about Shiraz was to take minutes. She felt that he spoke to her, Shiraz spoke to her in a humiliating manner, in an undermining manner, where he felt that her minutes are not meeting expectations. Both of them cried during the meeting. When I see someone cry, it is a big deal as well. And like I said, I asked them to start listing down their issues of concern, because if they want us to look into it as employee relations, we wanted specifics. As duty of care, and because I have witnessed it, first instance, their reactions, they came to me, they booked time with me. This is how we go to the next level. Out of duty of care, I would report it to Diana to initiate an investigation. At this point, I don't recall if I spoke to her directly, because Diana sits on the same floor with me. We work together. She may be in another building at one time, or in the DIFC or the Standard Chartered Tower, but if I'm sitting in front of her, I would have told her verbally, I would have dropped her a line. I'm not sure, I don't recall. But that was the point to initiate duty of care review. And when we say a duty of care review, we mean that we reach out to say, you've met with Mirna, you've shared specific incidents, how do you want us to go about this? We have an option of a formal grievance review, whereby we appoint a panel to run the grievance review. Another way of managing grievances is through an HR investigation process. So we do not have a formal grievance panel. We don't hold a formal grievance hearing to hear the allegations. We just take the allegations as reported, and then we run what we call an internal investigation, whereby we invite witnesses and we speak to them, take their statements, and we run a fact-finding review. The third type that we also offer colleagues who have grievances is informal mediation. Sometimes they wouldn't want to raise a formal grievance or have an HR investigation, and they think that they can deal with this informally. So we also have the option of informal mediation. They may also choose to say at one point, actually we don't want anything happening there, and they just withdraw. And this is how we are operating in employee relations. So when I flagged it to Diana, it is within our standards, especially that I have met and I heard specifics and I've experienced them feeling anxious, crying in the meeting, and they were not okay. There is a duty of care to flag it. They chose to take it through the HR investigation process, whereby it is run by ER only, and a fact-finding review took place, and witnesses were interviewed, statements were written, a report was issued, and it goes on from there. That's the process.
Do you remember what my question was, Mrs. Al-Najjar?
How did you report this to Diana?
And what is your answer to that question?
I cannot recall if it was verbal, or I was sitting across, or I sent her an email. But I did so after meeting with both the colleagues and establishing that there was a need for us, out of duty of care, to look into the matter.
And you said earlier that before there are meetings scheduled with you, this is something that had been drawn to your attention by Mr. Sheikh, is that correct?
Possibly. Or Suhail verbally, I don't know. As the HR business partner, I remember that this was flagged and they were invited to speak to me.
So either Mr. Sheikh or Mr. Akbar have said to you, there are these two ladies who are upset with Mr. Mahmood.
His behaviour, specifically his behaviour.
They're upset with Mr. Mahmood's behaviour. What should we do about it? Is that correct? Is that the chain of events?
So the guidance was they can reach out to employee relations to raise it.
And so you then, after you're told this by Mr. Akbar or Mr. Sheikh, you then schedule meetings with the two ladies, correct?
I can't recall how the meetings were scheduled, but I do recall very well that I met with each one of them separately to hear from them directly.
And these are just meetings, you don't take a note of them, you just hear what they have to say, correct?
I was listening to understand the issues and the concerns so that I can guide them on next steps. As part of an HR business partner role or an ER role, it doesn't matter. We're all going to listen and redirect accordingly. Whether I was the HR business partner or the ER person coming to know of this, I would react in the same way. We're all required to address these issues, specifically when the concerned people who are feeling the way they feel are coming to us to report it personally, and they have specifics around the matter.
Page 1920, we see the start of an email chain which goes down to 1922. So we see here Ms. Tabara writing to with a summary of what has happened. There's been a meeting, and then also what her options are. Correct?
Yes.
Now, if we can go to 1898.
Yes.
You see there an email chain. You're not copied into this, but this is an email chain between Mr. Long and Mr. Sheikh. And you can see from that email chain, can't you, that as of the 29th of January, Mr. Sheikh was aware of there being a grievance. And as of, in fact, it seems from that email chain, doesn't it, that Mr. Long and Mr. Sheikh had discussed this earlier on the Sunday, which would be the 27th of January. So we can see that...
Can I read the email first?
yes, please do.
Okay.
So, Mr. Sheikh knew about this grievance, and in light of what you've said earlier, he knew about this because he discussed it with you. He knew that you had met the ladies and that they would be escalating this to Mr.
I
Barrows.
think there is an assumption from your end here. I don't know what grievance he's talking about. I'm not on this copy, and I don't know what this is about. It doesn't state anything related to the incident that I was just talking to you about. It could
So
have
what
been
other
anything.
grievance do you think it was then?
I'm not sure. It doesn't say here. I'm not on copy. I'm not involved. I haven't seen this. I wasn't on copy. It could have been anything else, but why are we assuming it's about the two other female colleagues who I have met with? And like I said, let us say this is it. I'm not going to assume. But I mentioned that it could have come to me through Rehan, so he would know that people have issues. Or it could have come from Suhail to Rehan to me, or anything. I'm not able to comment on this, and I don't think it is the right question to assume that this is the same grievance.
Well, let's look at this, Ms. Al-Najjar. We would not be able to discuss the grievance as HR treats such cases as confidential while they're following up. Yes?
I don't
So
know.
this concerns Mr. Mahmood, doesn't it?
I don't know. I can't speak on behalf of Rehan. I think Rehan is the person who should answer this in specific and state his statement on what grievance he was talking about. Adam Long can be asked on what HR grievance was he talking about, and then they can comment. I can't comment on their behalf.
Well, I thought you'd give that answer. So you'll find on your screen some... If you could look at the transcript from day 6, which is the 26th of February. Have you got that?
Yes.
Now, if you open up that, if you go to page 23 of the PDF. Well, you may want to look at page 22, Ms. Almajar. And you'll see, hopefully you'll have internal pages. So you have a PDF page, and then you have within that PDF page 4 pages. So it goes 85, 86, 87, 88. Do you see that?
Yes.
So you may want to start at the top of 85. So the question was, did you know, as of 30th January, there were going to be complaints made about the claims? And His Honour clarified that we were talking about the 30th of January 2019. I confirmed that was the case. And then Mr. Sheikh's answers are the answers in bold.
So this is the statement of who?
This is Mr. Sheikh in
This is
evidence.
Rehan Sheikh's statement?
No, this is Rehan Sheikh's sworn testimony before this court.
Okay. Where do you want me to read?
Well, you said you wanted to see what Mr. Sheikh had to say about it, so
Okay.
this is what he had to say about it.
I don't think that's quite what the witness said you should ask him about.
Yes. Well, what I put to you is the following, that Mr. Sheikh, his evidence at page 89, internal, so that's PDF 23, his evidence was that when HR advised me about these grievances, this is when I was aware that there were grievances. Even at the time, I was not aware from whom the grievances were. Then I said to him, when you say HR, who within the HR function was it who told you about this? And his answer was, I think it was Ms. Tabara. So I think it was Ms. Tabara. I then asked if it was you. He says, no, Ms. Al-Najjar was nothing to do with that. She was part of the committee. So that's what he had to say about it. You wanted to know what I asked him the question. The point here, Ms. Al-Najjar, is very simple. Until your evidence this morning, no one...
You're on a site interrupt just before he puts the question. You'll recall that in evidence that Mr. Sheikh did then subsequently correct the person who had informed him.
I'd be happy for my learned friend to mention that correction to me, because I haven't.
Well, you'll remember it.
Yeah.
I only want to talk at any questions that are put on a false premise.
Yeah, no, that's I accept that.
I think it occurred after a break, didn't it? The correction, from memory.
I believe it's internal page 99.
I'm grateful. I'm very grateful for that. Yes, could you go to PDF page 25? I think is that the evidence at page 99 of this. When we said about the first time when I knew about the speak-ups, I mentioned Mr. Barra's name, but it's Aziza Dada. That was the email I got from Aziza Dada. Thank you so much. So that was the clarification.
So what's your question to me? I'm still
My
not
question
clear.
to you, Mr. Barra.
I'm Miss Najjar.
My question to you, Mrs. Al-Najjar, is this. You're saying, why are we assuming these are the same grievances, right? Put it to you that what we have here is a situation where on the 3rd of February, Ms. Tabara, we've seen the emails with the same ladies. Correct?
Aziza, right?
Yes.
Not Tabbara. Aziza. He corrected. Aziza.
No, I'm talking about the emails we were looking at in the bundle.
The one from Mr. Barrett and Ms. Yusuf.
Yes, that's correct.
Which one? Which page?
1920, I think.
Thank you.
Is that the one you're talking about, Mr.
Yes, that's exactly right. I'm great.
1920?
Yes. So we see an email from Ms. Tabara to Ms. Yusuf, originally dated the 3rd of February. Yes? Your witness statement is, unless you'll ask me for a reference to that, 27, so that's at 7601. I therefore referred the complaints to Ms. Tabara. So do we agree that these are the same complaints, correct?
So if we're talking about Gita and Fatima, I referred the complaints to Diana. How?
And
I'm not sure, but yeah.
I put it to you that it is very obvious indeed that the grievance that Mr. that Mr. Sheikh is talking about in the other email we went to in January, at the end of January, it is very obvious that this is the same matter, isn't it? Do you agree with that or not?
So I'm still not sure what is the question. If
Do
it
you
was
agree-
or it wasn't, what are you trying to ask me?
Do you agree that
Because 29 January and February is just 1 day or 3 days before February. What is the question really?
The question is, do you agree that Mr. Sheikh knew about the grievances from Fatima Yusuf and Gita Velakandan as of the 30th of January? Yes or no?
So what is the problem if he knew? Because if he knew or didn't know, that's not for me to know. These are issues that have happened with Gita and Fatima over a number of times, and it may have been escalated to him several times. I don't know if this is the same HR matter that Adam Long is referring to. We are assuming here that this is the same one. Rehan spoke and said this is the matter that Aziza spoke to him about. I'm not sure if this is what Aziza spoke to him about. I can't comment on their behalf. But grievance issues did not happen on one day. They happened over a period of time. If this is a matter that Rehan wanted to speak to Adam Long about, they can speak about it. If Adam chose to say these are HR grievances, HR are looking into this, he can say that. I'm not sure. If you want me to confirm if this is the HR matter, I can't confirm something that I don't know.
You and Mr. Sheikh had spoken about these complaints from these two ladies, correct?
Yes, as far as I recall, it could
You
have been
had
him
told him,
who reported this to me.
you had told him that you had directed these ladies to Ms. Tabara, correct?
Maybe.
He knew that, therefore, there were complaints about Mr. Mahmood's conduct which were going to be investigated by HR, correct?
Correct, as the global CEO for Islamic banking. That's fine for him to know if he's the one who's flagging it as an issue of concern. Is the problem that he knows? I'm not sure what is the question.
Mrs. Al-Najjar, it would be helpful. These are questions of fact I'm asking you. I'm not asking you what the problem is. I'm not asking you to predict what my
So
client's
what else do you
arguments
want
are.
me to say beyond what I'm saying? It could have been Rehan or Suhail who flagged that Gita and Fatima are going through tough times, and I reacted to say they have to share specifics. What else do you want me to say? I'm not sure.
Again, on the facts. Did you tell Mr. Sheikh, well, you told Mr. Sheikh about this before these ladies had met Ms. Tabara on the 3rd of February, correct?
So I'm just going to go with what I would have done. If I had met the colleagues and I decided that we will do the duty of care check and give them the opportunity to report, I would have said, don't worry, ER will handle it. You flagged something to me, ER will handle it. Just to give him reassurance, since he reported this. And again, this is part of how I mentioned grievances are shared. They can choose anyone to go to and report to them, and then they come to ER to say there is an issue. They come to HR business partner to say some colleagues are going through certain have concerns. How do we handle? How do we manage? And this is where ER will come and take the role. Whether I go back to him is just to continue from where we stopped. ER is going to handle this matter as a reassurance. I would have probably gone back to Rehan and said, we will handle this matter.
7604. So you can put away your transcript, and I will actually put mine away as well. So 7604 should be your witness statement again. You refer to a complaint from the head of legal, Mr. Vaselli. Now, this is your witness statement, and you will be familiar with it, but if you wish to refresh your mind, please do so. You set out extensively some emails. I believe, Your Honour, that you are already familiar with these emails, but you may not be familiar with all of them, but I'm going to ask my question when everyone is ready.
Which page again, sorry, Mr. Smith?
I'm at page 7604.
No. Which emails do you want to ask about?
Oh, they're the ones that are set out here extensively
I see.
below.
So you don't need to go to the emails.
Well, I'm trying to save us darting around.
Right.
I mean, for Your Honour's note, though, to do this properly, the correct email is the correct bundle page, which is 2040 and 2041.
Yes.
These are emails of the 6th of... the first email in time is an email of the 6th of March on page 2041, 12:53 p.m. From Mr. Mahmood to Mr. Vaselli, subject complaint. The second email is an email of the same date in the afternoon, 2:17, from Mr. Vaselli to Mr. Mahmood. The third email is an email from Mr. Mahmood to Huda Al-Mazam and copied into Adam Long. There is then an email from Huda Al-Mazam on to Mr. Mahmood, and that email loops in Mrs. Al-Najjar. And Mrs. Al-Najjar has given extensive evidence about this email exchange and her thinking at the time, at paragraphs where have we just read to?
38 and following.
38.
Yes. Thank you.
So that's where we are. Now, Mrs. Al-Najjar, I don't know if you've now had the chance to refresh your memory with these emails.
Yes.
Now, some questions arising from these emails. You say, you cite this email in paragraph 40, that's at 7605 of your statement. And what you take from this is that Mr. Vaselli doesn't want to escalate to a speak-up, correct? But was this email not of concern to you as an HR business partner for the unit? Doesn't it show that there is a concern by Mr. Vaselli at the unit approach to conduct and values?
Definitely is, and I went back to the witness statement of Vaselli because Vaselli was interviewed by Aziza, and he shared his statement on how he experienced the Islamic banking environment. We already had Vaselli's statement, and Vaselli did not make any reference to bullying in that. And I had remembered speaking to Diana about this, who was overlooking Aziza Dada while she was doing the investigation into the Islamic banking, and Vaselli was one of the interviewed people. Vaselli said He doesn't want to take anything formally, but we also had Vasili's written statement when he was interviewed. I have no concern if Vasili did not wish to come to us directly. I cannot force Vasili. Like I said, it is exactly consistent with how I've dealt with Gita and Fatima. They wish to meet, they can meet and share specifics. Vasili wishes to meet, he can share his statement in a confidential environment. He had ER speak to him, and he had the opportunity to share any concerns he wanted confidentially with ER. He chose not to. I cannot create an incident. Our role in ER is not to prove allegations correct. Our role in ER is to do fact-finding. If Vasili wanted to share bullying, he could have. If Shiraz came to us with specific incidents, reporting it, even if it was anonymously, reporting incidents where Vasili had gone through incidents of bullying, we would have also looked into it. It goes back to how we operate in employee relations. The HR business partner flagged it. It didn't go without a duty of care check. If this is what you wanted to know, how I reacted to this email outside the chain of emails.
Did you ask Mr. Vasili whether he wanted to raise this matter?
I never spoke to Mr. Vasili. I never met him. He never came to me with anything.
Just while we're on that topic, how many times did you ever meet Mr. Mahmood?
Shiraz?
Yes.
Mahmoud Shiraz? I met him casually during town halls. If I recall, like I would see him. I remember Shiraz coming to me once in the lobby and talking to me about certain training, but I do not recall ever speaking to Shiraz directly or Shiraz coming to me directly with any grievance or an issue. I may have seen him on the global Islamic banking floor, but I have not met with Shiraz in an official meeting where he shared grievances with me.
Ms. Al-Mazam's email is an email copying you into an email chain with Mr. Shiraz. I suggest to you that what it was an email inviting you to reply to Mr. Mahmood about how to proceed.
Vasili's email in response to Shiraz is one that changes the tone. It is Shiraz who's assuming the bullying and not Vasili. Shiraz is, it's not like it is just Shiraz writing it and I don't have Vasili's view. Vasili said, I don't have anything to share. I also know that Vasili and his people leader met with Rehan and they discussed the work environment. There isn't anything that wasn't happening and nothing was addressed. It is not an issue where Vasili didn't have a voice. Vasili is senior enough. He's the legal person. He understands our processes.
How did you know that there had been that meeting? It's not mentioned in the email chain, is it?
I know from Rehan. As his HR business partner, he gave me updates sometimes, just like Huda received as HR business partner. It wasn't that I wasn't completely aware of things. Whatever I'm saying, exactly what I know, what I recall, what has happened. I'm not choosing what to say and not to say.
Now, you take a much narrower an approach. You look at the two emails, you look at Mr. Mahmood's email, you look at Mr. Vasili's email.
And witness statement of Vasili.
Well, there is no copy,
fact-finding.
there is no evidence in this bundle that you had seen the witness statement. There's no email to you
You're
containing
asking
that.
me to share what I do which is not on email, and I'm sharing what I do. I have an oath on the Quran, and I will not say anything that I didn't do.
So your position is that you saw this witness statement of that Mr. Vaseli had given to Ms. Dada, and you say, he hasn't used the word bullying in this either. Is that correct? Is that what
He
your
had an
evidence is?
opportunity to share his concerns in an official ER meeting, which is similar to the official ER meeting that I had with Geeta and Fatima. This is exactly the same as Aziza meeting with Fatima and Geeta, the same as Diana meeting with Fatima and Geeta. When someone offers a colleague, it doesn't matter whether Mirna Al-Najjar is meeting with them or any other ER member is meeting with them or any other HR member, we're all the same. The fact that there was an opportunity for them to share their specifics. We cannot force them to share what they don't want to share. He had the opportunity, he didn't share it. He was invited by Shiraz probing and assuming bullying. Still Vaseli did not do it. There was an opportunity for Vaseli to speak openly in the presence of his people leader, and he still did not raise any concern.
Now, can I ask you, at paragraph 55 of your witness statement, you say, Ms. Dada had capability issues and was being performed. You were frustrated. This is the context. So 7609, paragraph 55.
Yes.
On 5th May, Ms. Dada sent another revised report. I was frustrated because reports should have been finalised by the ER team. Ms. Dada had capability issues and was being performance managed informally. Ms. Dada was eventually placed on a formal performance improvement plan. Now, given those concerns you had about Ms. Dada, why did you say, looking at her brief email exchange with Mr. Vaseli, he hasn't used the word bullying in that, so that's the end of it? Why did you have that confidence?
I am glad you bring out this matter, and this is something that I stressed on in this review, where I am always consistent in my approach. Yes, Aziza had performance issues. This is why Diana had to handhold and overlook what she was doing, and this is why when something is flagged to me, I even get involved further. When we do interviews, they are usually recorded and transcribed. So when someone gives a statement, it is not what Aziza assumed, it is his statement. We're not assuming what he said. That's one. Number two, on this specific review, the amount of times that there was back and forth is with my intervention, because I wanted Shiraz to be treated fairly, and I wanted the facts to be there, and I wanted Geeta to be treated fairly, and I wanted Fatima to equally be treated fairly in the grievance that was raised. If we look at Aziza's first conclusion, it was against Shiraz. And
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Ms. Al-Najjar.
I would like to continue, please.
Okay.
So, when I looked at the report in my capacity as the regional head of ER for AME, overlooking Diana and Aziza, with my governance and control hat for my own function, I asked them, what have you established against Shiraz? When Geeta says something against Shiraz, my job in ER is not to prove it correct. Geeta has to share specific evidence to suggest that Shiraz poorly treated her. If there isn't evidence, I cannot establish that against Shiraz. And that's why I pushed back on the report. Similarly with Fatima's incidents that were shared. If I run fact-finding process and I have nothing against Shiraz, the fact that they said this happened does not mean it happened. I need witnesses to corroborate what was being said. We are sitting in an open office. If Shiraz was viewed looking at the screen without permission and claimed as terrorizing ex-colleague, there are at least 3 other colleagues sitting at any point in time, or 2 other colleagues. We would interview everyone. If no one said this is Shiraz's behavior, I will not assume that is. That she said it and Fatima said it or Gita said it doesn't make it as an instance that happened. And this is why I pushed back on the report, and this is why I said there are capability issues. But this is not about the transcript of Vaseli's witness statement. If it was the conclusion of Aziza, I would have doubts. I am looking at the statement of Vaseli where he's not stating he's been bullied or subjected to bullying. Why would I assume incidents of bullying when Vaseli had several opportunities to state his own statement? I'm looking at his statement. I'm not looking at Aziza's conclusion. I corrected Aziza's conclusion when I didn't think that it was correct. And this is within my right. And this is how we are consistent, fair in employee relations. So back to your question, why would I assume there is bullying when his own statement, said by himself, transcribed because of his interview, and not a conclusion from Aziza? Aziza quoted his statement, and I didn't look at her conclusion.
Did you know that at this time, Mr. Vaseli was now mainly sitting outside the Islamic banking unit?
I actually don't know what he looks like, so I wouldn't know if he was or
You
not.
don't know what he looks like, right?
No, I haven't seen him or met him personally. So I wouldn't know if he's sitting or not. It was never a point that I had to comment on or meet him.
You say, this is paragraph 45, page 7606.
Which page?
7606. You say, sorry, 7606, paragraph 45. At the bottom of this, in light of the tone of the claimant's email, Mr. Vaseli's reply, and Mr. Vaseli's confirmation to Ms. Dada that he's not subject to any bullying or inappropriate behaviour, my view was that the claimant may have been seeking to use Mr. Vaseli to advance his own agenda against the GB management. Can I ask you the following? First of all, how did you know about this agenda against the GIB management?
If someone is assuming bullying and insisting on bullying when the actual person who should be claiming bullying is not talking about it, then this is something that is not related to Vaseli. It's related to Shiraz trying to make it seem like it's a bullying.
How did you know about this agenda?
I use the term agenda in the sense that someone has something in mind that he's trying to push.
The answer is that you knew about this because Mr. Sheikh had told you about it, isn't that correct?
You are assuming it. I don't know which time you are talking about that Rehan had spoken to me about Shiraz's agenda. I cannot say yes or no.
Well, this is March 2019, the time of this email. Had you been told about this by Mr. Sheikh then, yes or no?
I can't recall.
Ms. Al-Najjar, you're very fulsome in a lot of your answers, but then when you're asked quite simple questions...
Sorry, what is the word you used?
You've given some very long answers.
No, the word that starts...
Fulsome.
Fulsome.
Fulsome?
Fulsome.
F-U-L-S-O-M-A. It means expansive.
Okay. Thank
But
you.
when you've been asked some questions about, simple questions about what you knew and when, you can't recall things, can you?
My memory is such, and I am saying exactly what I recall, and when I don't recall, I'm not going to assume things or create things because you're forcing it on me. You may have evidence to prove it, but if I don't recall, I'm not going to talk about it. We're talking about incidents that took place many years ago. I will recall what is stuck in my memory. For example, it is stuck in my memory that Shiraz met me in the lobby down. I will not remember what day, but because he spoke to me about training, and I discussed it, and we had a chat of maybe a minute or two, and I walked. This sticks in my mind. It's in my memory. I'm not going to lie about it. But if you tell me, on that day, Rehan spoke to you, because you're saying it, it's like you're forcing me to remember it. If I don't remember it, I'm not going to say I do. So how you're questioning my details is how it is registered in my memory. We're not talking about something that happened this week.
Doesn't this email exchange from Huda show the problems arising from your double hat? Because she is seeking your advice.
I think you're assuming a problem here. Can you express it further? Because I don't know what the problem is in double hatting.
Okay.
If there was a problem in me double hatting, I wouldn't have been assigned this role in the first instance.
Okay, let's leave the hat aside. Let's put it this way. An issue has been escalated by Mr. Mahmood. That issue has been passed on to you by Huda. Yes? But when you look at this incident and what is said about it, what your view of it is influenced primarily by what you have heard from Mr. Sheikh about Mr. Mahmood.
I think you're assuming that, and I
Well,
do not accept it. You're assuming it. I explained to you already that I looked into it. I went and I looked at the statement. I looked at the response from Vaseli to Shiraz. So I refuse that you're assuming this point.
I'm not assuming.
My statement will not change.
I'm asking you the question.
You may continue to ask me the same question, and I'm going to say the same answer. You're assuming here that I have made an assumption. I did not make an assumption. I went and I looked into things. If I don't have a file note writing what I did, you cannot assume. I am very confident of what I have done because I do recall this and I do remember what I did in this specific point. I wanted to know, is Vaseli okay or not? So I did my due diligence check. And I looked. He did have an opportunity to speak. It was his witness statement. And it was within the same time that it wasn't like 5 months ago. It is within the same time period that Shiraz is raising it. And you have Vaseli writing back to Shiraz to say, I do not want to erase anything. It is quoted. It is his written email. It is not a conclusion made by someone or an assumption.
On the dates, the email at 2041 is an email of Wednesday, March the 6th, 2019, and it refers to events of that day. Mr. Vaseli's witness statement was on the 26th of February. So you couldn't assume, looking at a witness statement from 10 days before, that Mr. Vaseli was not unhappy or was not wanting to, had no complaint about an incident that post-dated that witness statement. You couldn't make that assumption, could you?
It is within a relevantly same period. I'm saying it is February and March are 1 month after the other. 26 February or mid-February and 6 March, that isn't a huge period of time. There are weekends in here. This is a Wednesday, so, and when is 26 Feb? It's, relatively speaking, it is within the same time period. There is nothing that worries me, and if you're judging my judgment, that's something else. I can't help. That's my judgment. I may have failed in your view, but I'm very confident that I was doing the right thing.
Your Honour, that may be a convenient moment.
Certainly. We'll adjourn now for 10 minutes, Ms. Vaseli. During the adjournment, you're not to speak to anybody from the bank's legal team or to any other witnesses, just go about your business and be back here in about 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Court adjourned.
Yes, but not for a while.
She's having difficulty loading mine at the moment, but that's not so.
You've got a nice technology. How many screens have you got? One, two, three.
Now I've got 4.
That's a proper setup. That's someone who's done. Not his first radio by any means, is it?
Yes.
Excuse me, I'm not able to open the PDF on this. That one, that one. The magic touch. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Yeah.
Be seated, please. Victor Smith.
Please could you go to 7608? You may want to look at the very bottom of 7607 as well. So at the bottom of 7607 it says Ms. Darda's report into the complaints against the
Sorry,
claimant.
can you speak a little bit louder?
Yes. Yes. Sorry, I didn't want to be too loud. It says Ms. Darda's report into the complaint against the claimant, so that's a subheader, and then your evidence on that starts at paragraph 49 on page 7608. On 4th of April, I received an order attaching her draft investigation report into the complaints against the claimant. And then we see a document reference, 2182 to 2184. So if I could now ask you to look at 2182, please. So this is an email from Ms. Darda to you, to Huda Al-Mazam, copying in Ms. Bajwa and Diana Tabara. And this is, she says she saved the draft report in the ER folder. We then see her findings. Can I look,
This is the executive summary, not the actual report. That's just a summary. So it won't be comprehensive or wouldn't have everything. There is a link that takes us to the actual full report.
On page 2183,
Okay.
there's a heading there, Other Findings. And the third of those other findings is, it has also been established that previous concerns were raised by the COO, that's Mr. Akbar, against the head of compliance for Islamic banking. The concerns came on the back of the 365 feedback given by the head of compliance on the CEO. The feedback was very strict and touched the core of the CEO's job and the basics of
Can you
his
speak louder, please?
The feedback was very strict and touched the core of the COO's job and the basics of his responsibilities. A recommendation was given by ER and SIS for an independent review to take place to verify whether the feedback given can be substantiated, and based on this, the right action could be taken. Then it says, we do not have evidence that any steps were taken by the business to complete the recommendations given. It appears that the matter was left at that point. First question, when you saw this draft, you must then have known that your earlier recommendations had not been followed at that date. Is that correct?
Yes.
Second, if we go down to the recommendation, we see that this is at 2184. As a result of our review, we recommend the following, the below. The recommendation initially suggested by ER and SIS referred to in other findings to be completed and a proper review to be finalised by the business, regional COO to review the 365 feedback provided by SN to the CEO, or to assign for peer review. Based on the findings from the review, next steps recommendations would be suggested. So you see that the recommendation you'd initially been given is being recommended again, correct?
Correct.
Now, were you, going back to 2182, were you disappointed that Ms. Dada had circulated this executive summary and then the link to the draft to Ms. Bajwa and Ms. Tabara before ER had reached a consensus on the document?
Disappointed. I don't know if I would use that word, but at that point, when Aziza sends an email, I would assume that she had discussed it with Diana first. So my first instance, at first instance, I wouldn't be disappointed because I'm not supposed to review it immediately. If I have concerns, then I pull it and I look into it again. But this is still within process. If my skip level is sending and Diana is on copy, I would assume that Diana, as her people leader, would have done her governance and control check on the report before sending it. It is only when I see something that I'm not very comfortable with, I would make additional comments and retract or propose or recommend other things or move on because I'm comfortable. So at first instance, I wouldn't be disappointed.
Then we see at 2185, sorry, no, 2185, we see some. Do you see it said about a third of the way down the page? If you can read it, is your screen big enough for this? Okay, good. You've got the advantage of bigger screen there. Good. I have highlighted the amendments below in red. So this is Ms. Dada making some amendments. But we see if we go down to the recommendations and the bit that we were just looking at, that remains the same. We then see an email at 2235.
Sorry, just want to clarify. You're asking me to look at 2185, the allegations, the amendments that Dada did, Aziza?
Yes.
So she made an allegation and put not upheld, which is against Shiraz. It is not upheld. And then you want me to scroll further down to 2186?
To 2235.
2235.
And we see there that Hudra Al-Mazam says, I'd recommend we schedule a meeting with Adam to discuss these findings. That's Adam Long, Mr. Mahmood's line manager, correct?
Yes.
And then we see up the page 2234 and over into 2235. We see an email saying, Hi Hudra, I'm discussing this with Mirna on Sunday as I see the point mentioned in other findings pertaining to the previous recommendations not being followed up on by the business has played a very important part in all of this. I will keep you posted. Now, did you speak with Aziza Dada the following Sunday?
I can't recall, but I may have, because this report went through several reviews, so probably either with Aziza directly, or if I didn't have an opportunity, Aziza and Diana would have spoken, and then me and Diana would have spoken. Aziza is my sync level.
And then we see on the 5th of May a revised report, 2275. And although it is out of sequence in the bundle, we see that at 2205, on the 8th of May, this is 2205, on the 8th of May you send an email to Ms. Dada saying that you've seen the report has been amended 3 times. Within ER we should have consensus prior to issue. And then it says, furthermore, the outcome should not be changing so much. This reflects poorly on ER and impacts our brand and credibility. This should have been finalised internally in ER prior to copying PAV, that's Ms. Bajwa, correct, as a stakeholder.
Yes.
Now,
so that's me giving constructive feedback to Aziza Dada.
and the final report we see at 2, so at the moment, sorry, just for everyone's reference, we're on the 8th of May 2019.
Which page?
That's 2205 is an email that you sent on the 8th of May, Wednesday the 8th of May 2019. Then we see at 2478, this is the final report circulated to Mr. Sheikh, Mr. Long, then with you and Ms. Tabara and Huda Al-Mazam in copy, correct? That's at 2478 on the 16th of June. don't have the benefit of any written drafting comments from you, but had you by this stage inputted into the draft report?
You are referring to April 4th, if I have reviewed it.
No, I'm referring to the document that's circulated at 2478.
You guided me to go to 2205.
5, which we just went to, which was an email of the 8th of May. I'm now taking you to 2478, which is when
Because I do recall that the first report I did not review. I reviewed when I got the chance to later on. And when I saw that I wasn't comfortable is when I gave feedback. So you want me to go to 2405, right?
No, I want you to go to 2478.
Sorry, 2478.
And we see here the summary, and we see at 2480, first of all, the text we saw earlier about the recommendation initially made by ER and SIS for a peer review, that other finding has gone from this report, correct?
Yes, because
Was
it
that-
wasn't within the scope of the review. When we receive allegations, we have to keep our review within the allegations. Other findings here was for Aziza, and based on her conclusion, that this 365 feedback was part of the review. It was about Geeta and Fatima, had nothing to do with Suhail Akbar. That recommendation specifically, and here where I'm giving her guidance, and you would know that that's when I read it and that's when I gave my feedback, because as I mentioned earlier today, we are not giving instructions, we're giving a recommendation. Today, if someone says, Diana's performance is a concern to me, and they are stakeholders, if I feel that I need to do a deep dive into her reports, review her reports, or based on the information they shared, I think that I should do a review to check on her performance, I can choose to do so. But if I'm comfortable with her performance, I can also choose not to do anything as the person in charge. So again, a recommendation is for them to either act on or not act on. In ER, in employee relations, a low severity matter does not mean a disciplinary is required or a formal action is required. A low severity matter would mean management review, coaching, and at maximum a letter of caution depending on what the matter is on. In this case, the 365 did not qualify as a grievance at first instance, hence why I did not think it was relevant to even bring it up in this. This is more about Geeta and Fatima. This is more about the relationships in the team as a whole. If there is an issue specifically between Suhail and Shiraz on a 365, it remains outside this review because we don't have anything from the business saying Suhail has a capability issue yet, which led to Shiraz being undermined. Shiraz has not come and reported specific incidents of being undermined by Suhail Akbar. Hence why the report had to change. It was not within the scope of the review.
So it's your evidence that you gave feedback to Aziza Dada to say this reference back to this previous issue should be removed. Is that correct?
Possibly, yes, if it's removed, because I don't think it is relevant in this review. And like I said, it's a recommendation from a previous incident. If the business decides not to act on it, it's their business. They will have to manage their stakeholders. This is not about conduct and a specific failure. This is about performance in terms of capability. Is Suhail failing to meet his objectives? If his people leader does not think so, I cannot impose. It's not within my remit to impose that he's not meeting his objectives. It's not within our area of specialty or expertise.
Had you discussed with Mr. Sheikh the question of whether there should be peer review of the feedback?
I may have commented in one of our discussions to say that my recommendation is for this stuff to be addressed. I may have, yes.
And was his position to you that he didn't think that a peer review would be helpful?
I can't recall if he made a reaction or not, but I can recall my recommendation stands. I think it would have been helpful if Suhail's performance was also reviewed based on the feedback given from Shiraz if they wanted to. My recommendation would have been, hence why I'm saying, if I have spoken to Rehan about this, this would have been my recommendation. But it doesn't mean if they don't do it, they're failing.
Now, Ms. Dada had suggested in her email to Huda, her view was, I see the point mentioned in other findings pertaining to the previous recommendation not being followed has played a very important part in all of this.
That's Dada's conclusion, right? Aziza's conclusion, we have a problem with her judgment and capability on conclusions, just like she concluded that Shiraz did wrong initially. So I wouldn't go with a judgment made by Aziza. She's not in a place where she can judge if that 365 feedback was related to this report or not. It is not related to Geeta's allegations on Shiraz's behavior with her. It's not related to Fatima's allegations on Shiraz's behavior with her. This report, this fact-finding, was strictly for Shiraz and Geeta, Shiraz and Fatima. It's not about Suhail Akbar. Hence why I do not believe that Aziza's judgment is going to be, or her conclusion is to be considered as 100% accurate. For me, her judgment did not stand for me. She resigned the day she was placed on a formal performance improvement plan.
When you say this is not about Suhail, I put it to you that
Suhail did not complain, and it wasn't part of his allegations. This fact-finding was not about Suhail's allegations against Shiraz. I am very comfortable saying that.
Ms. Dada was right to conclude that the failure to deal with this feedback issue had played a very important part in this.
In your opinion, but
was,
not my opinion. It's not related to this report. It's your opinion.
And she was right to say that because Mr. Akbar, the two ladies who come to complain are Mr. Akbar's direct reports, and the complaints they are making have been supported and encouraged by him, correct?
I cannot confirm what you're saying. You're assuming something that is your story, but not probably the fact. The fact of the matter here, this report is about Geeta and what she experienced and how she claimed her relationship with Shiraz is about. This is not about Suhail telling Geeta, go complain about Shiraz. This is why we did the review. Our intention is not to confirm the allegations made by Geeta correct. It is for fact-finding. So I refuse your statement if you're suggesting it as facts.
At page 2488 to 2490, we see an email chain containing the following. First, Mr. Long has provided feedback. Second, and you see that at the bottom of 2489, bottom of 2488 and onwards. And then you say, thank you for your feedback, Adam. We will arrange for the meeting in July and agree the action plan. This is your email on 2488. And Aziza Dada then says, hi Adam, thank you for taking the time to review the report and for the feedback provided. Now, point 2 on page 2489, we see Mr. Long's writing in black and Ms. Dada's comments on that in red. And he says, the 365 provided by SM on SA is referred to as being done in 2017. However, it was mid-year 2018, not 17. She says this is a typo. There is a reference to SA stating that none of the feedback provided by SM was true. If this statement is being taken as SA's opinion, I'm fine with that. However, it is being taken as fact, I have an issue. And then we have more about the 365. And then at the very end of the paragraph, we see Ms. Dada's comment. Please note that assessing performance is to be considered to be out of the HR review in this scope. I believe Rehan would be the best person to comment on this. As per point 3 below, I'll be arranging a meeting to discuss. Do you accept that comment in red there reflects your view, namely that performance issues were a matter for Mr. Sheikh to address, correct?
I didn't write this note.
Does it reflect your view?
Not completely. Because I think that it is being taken completely, not in the right meaning and context. When I say the performance as a stakeholder, he can comment on the performance of Suhail, but he's not his direct line. As the global Islamic banking, he experiences both Suhail and Shiraz. So if he feels that there are things that Suhail is not meeting, he can raise it further with the people leader of Suhail. If he thinks that the relationship between Suhail and Shiraz is impacting work on the ground, he can raise it. But this is not, if I understood your question correctly around the performance, I need to explain why I think Rehan, as the most senior sitting and responsible from a governance and control of the GIB, needs to make sure that his team in all the functions and the centers of excellence are achieving what they are there for. Ultimately, it's the success of the GIB. He's the most senior and he's the one who has to make a decision on who is supporting him to the extent possible to succeed on their strategy as the business.
At page 7612, we see a section beginning conduct risk arising from IB strategy. And then you refer to some emails and to 2301.
In 7612, what did you want me to look at?
I wanted you to understand that this was the section of your statement that
So I will read 7612 first.
Okay.
Okay. So from 7613, where would you like me to go?
Let's go to 2285.
Okay.
So we possibly 2286 may be the starting point. We see an email here from Mr. Sheikh to Mr. Long saying, "Thanks for taking my call. As discussed, I look forward to your leadership in resolving these issues. We have ambitious plans to grow this business, and these internal frictions are holding us back and becoming a constant irritant." Then we see Mr. Long's reply at 2285. Acknowledge the email below was not the right way to further discussion of the conduct plan. I've discussed this with Shiraz. Then next paragraph, I'm not sure what further discussion or action you expect in relation to this email. You've spoken to Shiraz, I've spoken to Shiraz, you and I have spoken. If you believe further action or discussion is required, please let me know. And then a couple of paragraphs below. There were comments made in the meeting yesterday that reflect the extremes of engagement. One, that GIB compliance and GIB legal should be involved in all business matters, transactions, and the other, they should never or rarely be involved, as legal and compliance support is provided by conventional legal and compliance. As discussed during our follow-up call yesterday, my view is that neither of the above extremes would provide the optimum model for GIB and compliance and legal to create a value-added contribution. So, questions arising out of this. This email chain is then forwarded on to you. Questions arising out of this. You can see that Mr. Long is saying that he and Mr. Sheikh have discussed matters the previous day. That would be the 7th of May. And we can see that there has been a difficult meeting. So those points are apparent from this email. But the question I have for you is, you say Mr. Sheikh forwarded me an email exchange. Indeed, he does at 2285. And what you further say, I should be at paragraph 68 of your witness statement at 7613. I understood that Mr. Sheikh had sent me the email chain to make me aware of the challenges he was facing with the claimant. It appeared to me that Mr. Long had the matter in hand, and so I did not take any further action. I do not recall specifically discussing it with Mr. Sheikh. First question, were you aware already of the challenges he, that's to say Mr. Sheikh, was facing with the claimant? Had he already made you aware of those?
Which challenges specifically?
it's your statement, Ms. Al-Najjar, paragraph 68.
So the challenges from a relationship perspective, as in working relationship.
Had he made you aware of those already?
The specifics, I'm not sure, but I can't recall specific incidents at that point where there were many, but just different challenges working with Shiraz probably. But I can't comment on the word challenges here. I don't have the description of it. But when I say it in my statement, it's related to the general working relationship with Shiraz, how the team experiences Shiraz in Rehan's view. So we're talking here in May 2019, right? If I'm not mistaken. We're already at the point where things have been ongoing for a very long time, and there were reviews taking place in the bank. So the relationship of Shiraz with the team is not something new. These are challenges. Are they within my scope? No, because they're related to business and their support from compliance. This is, again, not related to, at this point in time, not related to an ER review. He was sharing as an HR business partner at that point. And it is a conduct plan that Shiraz has put in place. I have no comments on it. Shiraz's statement on a breach, if this was not complied with, may be within my scope or within SIS scope if the breach was established. But in Standard Chartered Bank, no one puts a policy or a standard on their own. It is a teamwork. It either comes from the group for rollout on the ground, and then they look to what extent they can follow a standard from the group. If it was put in country or in region, it has to be the consensus of all parties and reviewed by all parties. In this case, it seems that Adam did not sign it off when Shiraz drafted it. The stakeholders did not agree on it when Shiraz drafted it. I haven't seen the conduct plan that Shiraz put in place. It's not within my scope. It's business related and how they operate their Islamic banking. But if they all had consensus on this conduct plan, and then a breach happens, they want to take someone to disciplinary on the basis of non-compliance with a conduct plan that was agreed by everyone, then ER can take someone to disciplinary on the basis of facts and evidence. So I'm not sure I had a role to play in this. Flagging by Rehan is just on how Shiraz has created another challenge by drafting a document on his own and deciding to roll it out and hold people accountable on his own to the extent that his people leader was not also aligned with what is going out from the CFCC function as a plan on conduct. So that's what I can comment on this.
The fact that Mr. Sheikh simply forwards you this email with the words thanks and regards, Rehan, suggests, does it not, that there was an ongoing dialogue between you and Mr. Sheikh about the issue of Mr. Mahmood. And the reason it suggests that is otherwise you would have no context or background. He doesn't explain to you in the email, this is why I'm forwarding it to you. He doesn't explain what it's about.
It's common for Rehan to share with me so many other things. Rehan shared with me issues on other colleagues as well, and not just Shiraz. It is me being his HR business partner, guiding him on things that impact the engagement level on the ground. As an HR business partner, I may propose to him how to deal with the morale and the engagement on the floor. Challenges mean communication challenges. Beyond that, there's nothing that is being discussed. I also want to bring to everyone's attention here that as a business head and someone who's receiving support from a support function, it was always within Rehan's remit to say, I do not want to work with Shiraz at all. That wasn't something that Rehan had come to us with as HRBP or as ER to say, I do not want to continue working with Shiraz without any background or history, although he had the right to do that at any point in time as the head of his business. We are considered support, whether it is operation, whether it's an HR business partner, whether it is compliance. We can choose, they as business heads can choose that they don't want to work with this person, and the support function has to replace that person. At no point did Rehan think it had reached that level where he's not going to work with Shiraz until the incident where there was a conference call and Shiraz's behavior was not appropriate with Rehan. Any time before that, Rehan has never said, I'm not going to work with Shiraz, although he had the right to. The challenges did not mean that he didn't want to work with him, although he had the right to say to Adam, please get me someone else. We have processes in place, but we never reached that point, so the challenges were general communication challenges.
You've just referred to yourself as his business partner, his HRBP/advisor. That
Rehan's.
is exactly. That is how you saw your role in the unit, correct?
Partly. During my assignment to GIB, I partly held that role, and I remained the head of ER for AME.
And you were often seen in Mr. Sheikh's room laughing and joking. You had a very good professional relationship with him, correct?
I cannot comment on this. That's an assumption. Laughing and joking, I think that's not appropriate. What do you mean laughing and joking?
He would keep you informed on an ongoing basis, as we see with this email at 2285, of what was going on in the unit, which
I
might
do not
be...
accept your statement of joking and laughing, and I don't know what you mean by that. That's different from me being professional at work. That's not the way I conduct my business.
He would keep you informed on an ongoing basis of what was happening in the unit that might be relevant from an HR personnel perspective. Do you agree with that?
In a very professional manner, and talking about work and business, and we do not laugh and joke about work and business.
You would keep him informed on an ongoing basis of anything that HR or ER were doing or being told that might be relevant to Mr. Sheikh, correct?
And our group standards, yes.
2300. This is an email which you were not copied into. It's an email from Mr. Mahmood to Mr. Barnes.
Who is Peter Barnes?
And in the paragraph there is one recent development which I'd like to bring to your attention as it's causing me concern. Following an email I sent to the CEO is...
Miss Alger wanted to know who Mr. Barnes is. Are you able to help her with that?
Your Honour, the position I'm taking is that I've said I'll finish by 4 today, and if I start asking Ms. Al-Najar's questions, I'm going to be here until midnight.
Well, out of fairness, she needs
Mr.
to know.
Barnes,
You're
Mr.
putting
Barnes,
to her an email that she's never seen.
yes, Mr.
She
Barnes
needs to know
is
who the parties are.
he's one of the I3 team, I believe. We can see that now. I'm more than happy to answer the question. Let's go to 2301. I'm very happy to answer these questions, Your Honour. I'm just conscious of time. But
It's a question of fairness.
Yes, no, that's fine. I don't wish to pass over things, so I will go through them carefully. 2301, Mr. Barnes, we see here, is a group head of I3 investigations at Standard Chartered Bank.
Thank you.
And the email that we see at 2300 is a reply to an email that Mr. Barnes had sent Mr. Mahmood on the 13th of May. Please do, Mrs. Al-Najjar, read pages 2300 and 2301 if you would like to familiarise yourself with their contents. This email on 2200 says that, to put this precisely, it said 2300. It says that Mr. Mahmood has been told by Mr. Long that Mr. Sheikh has asked for him to be replaced. So that's a sort of chain, and it is the case that you were not copied into this email. My question to you is, were you told by Mr. Sheikh between the 7th and the 14th of May, or early in May, were you told that he wanted the claimant to be replaced in the unit?
As per my recollection, no. And I'm surprised to read it here. I don't recall ever having that conversation with Rehan, whether in my capacity as HR business partner or capacity as Amy. I do not recall this conversation. And reading this, I think it's Shiraz's view on why this behavior from the Islamic banking head. And like I said, what I said just is flowing within his right to say, I do not want to work with Shiraz anymore, I do not want to work with Nirma, she's not meeting my expectations, I do not want to work with Suhail, I do not want to work with Wazali, we are all from support functions to the business. He can say that, but I don't think I was privy to this. I don't recall at all. It's the first time I come to know about this.
Page 7611 is, we're going back to your witness statement, and 7611, paragraph 62C says, so this is, do you remember we were looking at an email from Ms. Dardar to Mr. Long, and it says at 62C, Ms. Dardar confirmed that she would arrange a meeting with me, Ms. Tabara, Ms. Al-Mazam, Mr. Sheikh, and Mr. Long to discuss next steps, and you then say, I cannot recall a meeting taking place. I put it to you that there was a meeting in early July 2019 between you, Mr. Long, Mr. Sheikh, and Ms. Tabara. And I further put it to you that
When was that meeting, sorry, again?
early July 2019.
How do you know I was in attendance, if I may ask?
Oh, I think you just answer the questions at this stage. But wait for the question and then do your best to answer it if you could.
Okay. What date was Friday? It was the.
I think you're going to need to go at this point to the transcripts.
This was day 5. It should be labelled.
Have you found the one marked day 5?
Which page? Day 5. Okay.
It's day 5, it says.
Okay. And this is whose statement?
This is Mr. Adam Long giving evidence to this court on
Friday, and sorry, is this the correct day? What date was Friday? Sorry, was it the
23 February.
23rd of February.
Yeah, this is, sorry, the one that is labelled day 5, at least in my, hang on, let me just try and get this. Hang on, sorry. Try this again, sorry, I think. Yes, it's page 32 of the PDF. And it's at page page 124. Sorry, it's page 31 of the PDF. I ask a question about this meeting. I raise the question of what happened. And Mr. Long's answer at page 125, lines 15 to 21 here. I can't recall what Mr. Sheikh said in that meeting, but as I put in my witness statement, I remember discussing the point with HR that they recommended that Mr. Mahmood be put on a performance improvement plan, but I had an issue with that because they seemed to be saying this is a result of an investigation that had no conclusive findings against it.
This is a question that was asked about a meeting in early July.
That's correct. That's the
Well,
meeting.
Your previously asking the witness about a meeting in some...
in early July.
Was it early July, was it? All right.
Let me put it to this way. Do you have any recollection of a meeting?
I do not recall this meeting. I wasn't present. I don't know where does Adam say that I was present.
The email that you asked the witness about on page 2300 was dated May.
No, sorry, I may be moving too fast. What I did was I had moved on from the email of May.
All right.
I had said the correct place is I had referred to Ms. I was going to paragraph 62 of the witness statement at 7611. And this is an email of Ms. Dada saying that she confirmed she would arrange a meeting with...
All right, right, I follow now, thank you.
And the witness's evidence is that she has no recollection of it. And I just need to... I can't ask questions about a meeting which she has no recollection of, so I just need to put it this way. Were you aware in early July 2019 or in July 2019 that there had been a discussion of putting the claimant on a performance improvement plan? Were you aware of that?
I can't recall.
Were you aware of
I wouldn't be surprised because of the performance rating later on. I know that there were concerns around the performance rating, which reflects performance, and if there are areas for development, we would usually place a colleague on a performance improvement plan. But that specific meeting I did not attend as far as I recall, and I don't know if there was a discussion on PIP at that point in time specifically. But naturally, when there is a poor performance or areas for development, the natural next step is a performance improvement plan, where the people leader would then initiate the discussion on the areas for improvement.
Did you know that there was a discussion about offering the claimant an MSA back in July, August?
An MSA?
This is July, August 2019, to be clear about the date.
I can't recall the exact date now, but I can check my document. I know that there was a discussion at one point in time with Shiraz on a mutual separation agreement, but that came after the decision on ICEE that this role was going to eventually be made redundant, and I think a proposal was made to Shiraz on a mutual separation agreement. But now, in this second, I can't recall the date, but I know that there was a discussion once with Shiraz on a mutual separation agreement, which he declined.
Can I ask you, in defence to you, I should take you to 4100 at the bottom of the page. This is an email from Mr. Long to people not including you. It's an email sent in February 2020. But what one sees in the third paragraph on page 4101 is a statement. I explained to Emma that I've not put a plan in place due to the ICE restructure, the ongoing appeal process. So this is later, yes? This is February 2020. The reason I'm taking this to you is that we see in the fourth paragraphs here as follows. I'm just giving you the context in the third. So by this stage, we've got a P3 review that's occurred, a restructure.
Stage of what? Which period? Stage which period?
But this, if you look up, you see it's February 2020, yes? That's why I'm trying to give you the context so that we don't get confused, yeah? But the reason I'm taking you to this email is that in the fourth paragraph, it says, I mentioned to Emma that the best approach for the bank and the employee would be a MSA, adding that Rehan and I had both discussed this with local ER back in July, August, but were told that a MSA would not be possible.
Did he say who local ER was? Because local ER can be head of UAE ER, Diana, not me. I'm a regional head, and yes, if I had approved, they would have gone. If she's come to me, they would have gone. And again, usually this is my time of leave. I leave from mid-July till end August, third week of August. That's my yearly break with the kids and my husband. So I'm not sure I was there to approve it or even discuss it.
Did you know that it had been discussed?
I don't recall. I do recall the MSA makes more sense in a 2020 because I was part of this discussion. I wasn't part before. And it was related to ICEE because we knew it was happening for sure. It was just put on pause because they were thinking, do we roll the ICEE all together at one time, or we take the role of Shiraz and let him know from now that his role in 2020 will come to a change at one point in time.
Back in the summer of 2019, your evidence may be that you were away and didn't know about this, but I just need to ask you the question. Did you know that another thing that was being discussed was a restructure following which the claimant would be put at risk?
I don't know when exactly I found out, but I found out when I was asking on a point that Shiraz brings out, which I saw in the Project Barossa, I think, or the audit report, where does the Sharia team report into? Do they report into business or should they report into compliance to avoid any conflict? So in this process, as an action, it was put that the CFCC will relook into the roles within their team and there will be a restructure. The restructure meant that Sharia team will report into the compliance role. This was a decision taken but not implemented due to the bigger CFCC restructure rule. So I was aware that the reason why Shiraz was raising it, but no one could tell him because he shouldn't have been privy to the restructure overall in his capacity. This is why I was reassured that this wasn't a point from audit that was not action. This wasn't a point of conflict that Shiraz was raising, was not action. So this is part of me checking on things that come to my attention. If Shiraz had a problem with or a concern around the reporting line of the Sharia team into the business versus into compliance, has this been addressed? I was reassured by Adam that this is part of a bigger restructure and this is going to happen. No one could tell Shiraz when that decision was taken because he shouldn't have known before everyone else has signed off and the group signed off on ICEE. But when did that happen? I can't recall the date, but I'm very confident that I had this discussion and I got the reassurance from Adam Long on it.
You mentioned Project Barossa. Let's move on to Project Barossa now. Your involvement starts with the email at 2416 when you are emailed by Emma Crooks saying, "Dear Mirna, I hope this email finds you. I hope that this finds you well." So this is page 2416. At the bottom of the page, I've received the attached HR allegations as part of a broader investigation. Then Mr. Bucket of the I3 investigations team sends you an email on the 10th of June saying, "Dear Mirna, I'm starting interviews with staff members this week in connection with the matter below. Before I do so, could you review the information provided by Emma and let me know if there should be a separate ER investigation?" We then have another email the next day, and then we have your first substantive reply is at 2415 on the bottom of the page. And you can read that email.
Thank you.
not sure whether Your Honour's already read it, but if Your Honour has not already read it, I'm not sure we've been here. We may have just been here briefly. This would be the time to read it.
Yes, thank you. I read.
So, you are volunteering at a meeting to Mr. Dubai. You say, if you're in Dubai, I'm happy to catch up and agree the plan. Back-to-back meetings. I'm happy to meet if you're here. Alternatively, we can catch up on the phone and you give your phone number, correct?
Correct.
You then have a meeting with Mr. Bucket on the 25th of June. You refer to that meeting in your witness statement at paragraph 81.
Which page?
7616.
Thank you.
You say, I met with Mr. Bucket to discuss his questions. I cannot remember exactly what was discussed, but I do remember discussing the claimant's P3 rating. I did not know anything about how Mr. Long had rated the claimant. However, in my experience, Mr. Long is very independent. Now, a few points. First, that there's no note or minute of this meeting on the 25th of June that you're aware of, correct?
I think so, yeah.
And second, you knew, because you were within the confidentiality register, you knew that Project Barossa arose out of speak-ups made by Mr. Mahmood, correct?
Yeah, when Emma reached out to me and when I spoke to Simon, that would be, usually when they get involved, it's a speak-up. So I don't have to be told, I can understand it. And usually when the I3 team or central compliance take on any investigation, instead of the country ER or the country SIS, is because the disclosure would have asked for an independent review. And this is how the bank reacts to that specific request. They will take it to another team who are independent and usually outside the country.
It wouldn't normally have come through to you as an HR business partner for this team, correct?
Depending on the allegations, depending on the scope, depending on how the main team managing looks at my independence as a person, looking into this. So if they think I'm independent enough to provide the information they need, they will give it to me. If not, they will not give it to me. It is the decision made at their level.
And by this stage, we're being specific, the 25th of June, you were in the position of first having had complaints about Mr. Mahmood's conduct made directly to you by two, Geeta and Fatma Yusuf, earlier in the year, correct?
Which were not upheld.
You're also in the position of having a full awareness from Mr. Sheikh about the dealings he was having with Mr. Mahmood and the challenges as you
I
described.
can't say full, only what he has shared with me to that extent. I can't say full because clearly I didn't know about his decision to stop working with Shiraz, which I read in that note. I wasn't aware of it.
And you had also had to give advice on, you'd given advice the previous September, or October, on how the 365 issue should be dealt with, correct?
Which was not related to ER, it was related to performance as in support function performing in the view of compliance.
And you'd had escalated to you by Huda the question of Mr. Mahmood's email forwarding on Mr. Vaseli's an email exchange with Mr. Vaseli, and you've also looked at Ms. Dada's report, correct?
Correct.
So you have had multiple instances where you have been engaging with what I would loosely describe as people issues connected with Mr. Mahmood, correct?
Correct.
When you met Mr. Bucket, it would have been natural for you to tell him about those. Did you tell him about those issues when you met him on the 25th of June?
I don't recall. What I recall is specifically helping him find information that he was looking for. So he wanted a specific information related to Shiraz's pay. He wanted to know information on the P3 rating. These are all audit tracked information. It's not my view. So the scope of our conversation was mainly related to that. I do not recall going to that extent of sharing. If I recall, for example, my meeting, and maybe it's not relevant now, you'll come to it later, just to give you a view of the context of the meeting, when I was being interviewed by Masoud, for example, I shared everything because he's telling me, share everything, who took up an investigation later on. But with Simon, he was asking me specific questions, so I was addressing his specific questions, and I don't think we discussed this, but he was asking me specific questions.
You gave Mr. Bucket a negative view of Mr. Mahmood when you spoke that day, didn't you?
Sorry?
You gave Mr. Bucket a negative evaluation of Mr. Mahmood when you spoke that day.
You're asking me, or you're assuming, or you're telling me?
I'm asking you.
No, I haven't. I did not think negatively of Shiraz at any point in time as such.
2769. This is the BMA review. Mr. Crispian Cuss. Mr. Cuss was conducting the BMA review. Do you remember that? He is the head of business model risk analysis, and I believe he's based in, I think it's Singapore.
I do recall the BMA review. I do recall meeting with someone from the BMA team. I'm just not sure on the name of that person, but I can read this email.
It's best to start at the bottom email, which is 2769 to 2770.
Thank you.
So, very good to chat yesterday. He's spoken to you the day before, which will be the 25th. Now, the 25th of June is also the date when you meet with Mr. Bucket. And he says here...
Do you mind if I read the email?
Yes, go for it.
Thank you. Okay.
The question you've been asked is about the almost wholly Pakistani origins of the team and the lack of Emiratis. Yes?
Yes.
Although Mr. Cuss does not refer to Mr. Mahmood at all, suggests that it would have been obvious to you that that question focused on the Pakistani origins of the team came from Mr. Mahmood, and it would have been obvious because...
No, I don't agree. I never knew anything about Shiraz's nationality or anything about him at that point. I do not look into these details out of just looking into details, so I do not accept your assumption. We were talking here about the diversity of the GIB team as a whole, and it's important to look at the background and the context of the diversity in the team. GIB, the Islamic Sharia, is a very rare resource, and people have to be certified and have to qualify. So when we look at the team and how it was constituted, the number of years the team members have been in the team as well, there isn't high turnover. It is not about there are vacancies and opportunities to diversify. Them sitting in the UAE as the global team meant that we are hiring from the closest region, and because of them being Pakistani is not because it was an intentional approach by the bank. Where an opportunity comes up and where a vacancy will come up, we will look into diversity, but at no point Shiraz was as part of our discussion on diversity at all. I refuse that statement or assumption. I was very clear that we look as a bank at diversity, but we need natural attrition for that diversity to come in. And we said we will ring fence a new headcount that will come in. So I don't accept your assumption. Thank you.
It would have been obvious because the conversation you've had with Mr. Cuss about about the BMA review the previous day. The previous day you've also spoken with Mr. Bucket about Project Barossa, where you knew that the claimant had instigated that review, had started that review. And you are a very experienced ER professional, and you would have known that the person who was behind these escalations to the bank was Mr. Mahmood, weren't you?
What is this? Sorry, what I'm trying to say is, how is this related to Pakistanis? At this point in time, and until I was preparing for this, I did not know what the allegations of Shiraz were ever beyond issues in communicating with the team and challenges. At this point, I'm not talking about nationality. I do not, at that point, I never knew what was Shiraz's nationality. You say my experience, yes, I can, if they tell me, I can assume that this is being asked on Shiraz. He may have raised it, but you can't assume that this is about him having raised issues about the Pakistani nationality. I don't accept it. I'll explain myself differently. I feel this is an assumption because I'm an Arab. And it's like when I'm sitting and I'm for someone to assume that I've assumed anything about the other individual. For me, I don't know if it's appropriate to even say it, but everyone looks the same, whether they are from India or Pakistan or any other country. For me, they look the same. It's just like how others may see me and not know if I'm Lebanese or Syrian or Jordanian or Palestinian. I can be anything for them. What they see on the face means nothing on nationality or citizenship. So I do not accept this assumption. I don't even know if actually all the team members in GIB are Pakistani nationals and don't have a dual citizenship, for example. That is an assumption. I do not accept it at all.
Convenient time? Is this a convenient time?
It is a convenient time. Your Honour, I do need to raise the issue of time. I have not wanted to cut the witness off or hector the witness, especially after exchanges earlier. I've been careful also to take the witness to documents, and indeed Your Honour has rightly told me to do that. I do have to say that I am less than halfway through my cross-examination of this witness. I am not very far less, but I am barely at the halfway mark. Now, we have got some time because, as I don't know whether it was jinxed this morning by talking about potentially bringing Mr. Phoebe along a bit earlier, but we have a bit of time to play with. But I do need to flag that at the moment I would...
Well, we're going to finish on Friday, come what may.
Exactly.
So how you use the time is a matter for you, Mr.
What I was going to...
Should we resume at 2 then?
I would be grateful, exactly.
Does that give you sufficient time to get some lunch, Ms. Al-Najjar, 2 p.m? All right, well, we'll adjourn then until 2. Same rules apply. Don't talk to anybody about your evidence. Don't talk to the lawyers from the bank. And just get back here a bit before 2 p.m.
Your Honour, I should be clear about this. We are absolutely going to be done by Friday. And if I need to cut other witnesses short to conclude this examination, I will conclude this examination.
Right.
Your Honour, I don't think it's fair to observe that the length of any answers has been the cause of any increase in the length of cross-examination. I think it's down to my learned friend, but I think we really ought to try and get this witness completed today, because we have logistical issues with the other witnesses. So I think we really must finish with this witness today.
Well, that's the ambition, clearly. There is a limit to how long we can expect Ms. Najjar to sit in the witness box on any given day, but
I agree. I mean, Your Honour, the point is, when my learned friend was cross-examining Mr. Mahmood, my learned friend was very direct in asking Mr. Mahmood to answer the question. I'm not making a criticism of that, but I'm simply saying that I've taken a different
I think we're being
approach.
distracted and wasting time.
Yes.
I think we should try and finish Ms. Al-Najjar today. If that means we sit a bit later, if Ms. Al-Najjar is up to it, then we will. Right. We'll adjourn until 2 p.m.